Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. So we're starting a new Tea Party, TEA, Trading with the Enemy Act. Use it to shut down those ratings agencies, prevent them from attacking our federal government, our states, and our localities. Now let's shift gears. A turning point on the Libyan front. Two important things have occurred in the last 24 hours. The number one thing, the assassination of the rebel terrorist leader Yunus by his own confrere of the rebellion, presumably by Haftar. You know, Khalifa Haftar. Hefter. The New York Times calls him Hifter. That's useful because it gets him close to Hister, whom Nostradamus identifies as the Antichrist. So fundamentalists out there, take note. This may be the work of the Antichrist. Hefter, you'll remember, is the CIA man, the insider who lived for 20 years here in Northern Virginia in the immediate neighborhood of CIA Pentagon headquarters, and then went over and declared himself the supremo of the military side of the Libyan rebellion. And he was always, therefore, in a rivalry with Yunus. So it's been Yunus against Haftar. And remember, I've reported in the past that Haftar units would call in NATO airstrikes against Yunus's units, and Yunus's units would call in NATO airstrikes against Haftar's units. It looks to me like Yunus has a constituency, maybe in the Arab world, people that he got to know when he was a minister for Gaddafi for many decades. He may have more of a constituency in Europe, but Haftar represents the CIA. So this looks like a CIA assassination of one of the rival gangs, or better yet, it is simply the descent into civil war among these terrorist factions. There's a strong tribal element. The New York Times writes, tribal fears spread in the wake of the assassination of Haftar. Yes, Haftar is a member of the large Obeidi or Obeidat tribe, and it looks like a tribal vendetta may be in the offing. I think this may foreshadow the collapse of the rebellion, that it collapses into a complete welter of competing terrorist gangs. As of about the end of June, when I was visiting Tripoli, we had reports of from 15 or 20 all the way up to 40 gangs over there on the side of the rebels. And the question was, how long until the inevitable conflict among them would break out? So we now have an AP wire saying that the February 17th Martyrs Brigade, precisely one of these extremist factions, the February 17th Martyrs Brigade of the rebels is accused of having killed Yunus. Is this one of the many fronts for Al-Qaeda or the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group? This is a monstrosity. This is an absolute zoo of gangsters. Remember, the CIA wants what? Warlords, criminal syndicates, tribalism, and chaos. And they're getting all four here in Benghazi. How embarrassing for Hillary Clinton that she has called these people the champions of democracy. Let's look at democracy in action. Already on the evening of Wednesday, the 27th of July, we got reports through wire services and then Al Jazeera that Yunus had been arrested in his headquarters near the front apparently around Brega, east of Brega, so that he was arrested and he was brought into Benghazi by some authority or some armed gang. And now we have a news conference by Jalil, emerging now as the spokesman for this entire rebel gaggle of terrorists. Jalil reports that Yunus was brought to Benghazi to be questioned by a 4-judge panel in relation to his alleged contacts to the Gaddafi regime. However, says Jalil, he was then released on his own recognizance, and then he was killed on the road between Benghazi and Brega. Now, nobody believes this, and in particular the Obeidat have immediately, they didn't believe it from the beginning. As soon as the word spread that Yunus had been arrested and taken to Benghazi, units of the Obeidat tribe, loyal to Yunus, pulled out of the front line and headed for Benghazi to try to liberate their man by armed force. Now, he was already dead before they got there. No bodies have been found. By the way, it's not just Yunus. There are also 2 colonels, 2 important guys in their own right that have also been assassinated. According to most reports, no bodies have been found, but we're also getting reports that a funeral has been held in Benghazi by the rebel terrorist leadership. How that works, I don't know. Is the funeral possible without a body? Maybe they considered it a memorial service. This is quite mysterious. Maybe we can get some enlightenment on this. There are reports from some wire services that burned bodies, one of them that of Yunus, have been found at some place, but nobody really knows. Now, we've also got reports that truckloads of armed Yunus supporters stormed one of the main hotels in downtown Benghazi. They roughed up some foreign correspondents and fired their weapons at the facade of the building. They shot out a bunch of windows in the hotel. It's democracy in action. Now, so far, the fighting between the various armed factions, it hasn't materialized yet, at least as far as we know. But this now seems to be the next step. A tribal vendetta is mandatory by the Obeidat against the murderers of their principal guy. Hefter is the main suspect, the guy with the inside track to the CIA. Let's look at the predicament of Jalil, who gave this press conference. Jalil, just like Yunus, is a turncoat. This is a guy who worked with Gaddafi for many decades. He then turned his coat in the February period of this year, went over to the rebels, became apparently the head of the rebels. Jalil, is vulnerable to exactly the same kind of charges that were circulated against Yunus. So we have 2 groups, right? Yunus and his gang could say to Hefter, look here, you're a CIA agent. And Hefter would say back, you're a Gaddafi agent. And then out come the revolvers and the Kalashnikovs, and the democratic debate ensues. We are told that by Jalil that the people responsible for the killing have been arrested. But again, we have a high-level rebel source telling the Associated Press it's the February 17th Martyrs Brigade. It is interesting how little those international press jackals in Benghazi have been telling us about the proliferation of all of these armed terrorist cliques, factions, splinter groups, and so forth. Now, this, I think, makes this too smelly for anybody in the world to touch. Very good that Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov says that the Russian government is not going to recognize the rebels. Man, you'd be crazy to do that now. What have the rebels been up to in the last week, or what has NATO been up to? NATO has managed to bomb a hospital, killing about 10 people. We have, after Human Rights Watch talked about the rebels mistreating people in conquered areas, right, giving